Hi, I'm Darrin Peppard. Welcome to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, the podcast dedicated to today's hardworking leader. Join me every Sunday for leadership insight, inspiration, and a little pep talk to keep you rolling down your road to awesome. All right, welcome back into the Leaning into Leadership podcast. I am Darrin Peppard, and this week, my guest on the Leaning into Leadership podcast is Bethany Hill, the joyful leader herself. Bethany has been an educator in Arkansas for 23 years. Her experience includes being a teacher at the kindergarten through third grade level. She's been an instructional coach, a literacy trainer, an assistant principal, a principal. Currently, Bethany serves as the teacher recruitment and retention specialist at the Archford Education Service Cooperative in Arkansas, and she's an adjunct professor at the University of Central Arkansas. What most of us, and this is how I connected with her, know about Bethany is she's the founder of the hashtag Joyful Leaders. It's a hashtag that promotes the positive in education and encouragement among educators. Her passions and speaking engagement topics include school culture, whole child mindset, trauma-informed practices, culturally responsive teaching, family communication and engagement, and social emotional learning. Bethany is an equity, diversity, and inclusion advocate, and she is an anti-racist educator. Bethany is one of my very favorite people. I was honored to have her write the foreword for my book, Road to Awesome. And to be honest with you, this recording that you're going to hear today is the first time Bethany and I actually had a conversation. Everything for the last 2 or 3 years that I've known Bethany has been through social media. So finally having an opportunity to talk with her, not in person, but, through StreamYard, was amazing. You're going to catch a lot of that, I think, in this interview. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Before we get to Bethany, I want to talk a little bit about school and district leadership teams. Now, I've shared on the podcast before, my passion for professional development for leaders needs to be about leaders. That's why we've created high-performance leadership teams from Road to Awesome. I mean, let's face it, folks. School and district administrators, the operational leaders, the administrative team, they are the key in the development and sustainability of a district's foundation. No matter how much work and effort is put into the school-wide systems, if the administration does not have the proper cohesion, the mindset, the plan, and ultimately the execution, the students and staff will be limited in the level of success they can achieve. Road to Awesome has developed a transformational framework to dig deep into leadership challenges found all too common in school and district level leadership teams. Among those struggles, the most common challenge is not having every member of the team aligned with the focus, the core values, and the mission of the district. This does not mean that the members are not good leaders or that they're not worthy of being on the team. Rather, this is on the organization, because often organizations overlook the importance of leadership boot camps that align efforts, expose and highlight strengths of each team member, and drive the team toward meaningful goals and achievable goals. This is the focus. Road to Awesome's high-performance leadership teams and ongoing leadership coaching. If I just said anything that hit you right in the core about your leadership team, maybe a lack of clarity, maybe a lack of cohesion, getting everybody on the same page, folks, let's have a conversation. This could be the work that turns the tide for you and for your leadership team. Reach out to me at Darrin M. Peppard at roadtoawesome.net, and let's have a conversation. All the information you need is in the show notes. Road to Awesome high-performance leadership teams are there to get you and your school or district on the road to awesome. Now, let's get to Bethany Hill and this absolutely fantastic conversation. Enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, Bethany, thank you so much for joining me on the Leaning into Leadership podcast. I've really been looking forward to this conversation with you. I'm sure we'll reflect back on the time we've already spent before we hit record on some of the incredible topics that honestly we should have been recording. Maybe we'll try to replicate that, but either way, thanks so much, Bethany, for being on Leaning into Leadership with me.
I'm so excited, so stoked to be here, and I felt like I've known you for years. So even though we've never met in person, so this is the next best thing. So I'm really excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's like kind of the sign of the times. You know so many people that you've never actually physically been in the same room. But that will happen. I mean, we've both made that clear that eventually that is going to happen, and we'll have to find a way to be deliberate about that. So
yes.
Yeah. So I would imagine most of my listeners know who you are, but maybe just a real quick background, just let people know, who Bethany Hill is, and where you're coming from, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I am located in Central Arkansas. That's the Southern accent. And so I've lived here my whole life and been an educator for 23 years. I worked in the same district for 22 years. And I was a teacher, an instructional coach, an assistant principal, a principal, did a lot of staff development, things like that for that district. And recently just transitioned into a new role as a teacher retention and recruitment specialist for a region of Arkansas. So I'm one of about 15 or 16 in the state that serves in this role, and I'm still learning a lot about it. I'm coming up on a solid year almost in the position, and it has been so rewarding. I've enjoyed it so much. It's been a big transition from leaving a building and being surrounded by kids and a school family on a regular basis. But I have a team of people that I work with that are incredible and all have their own strengths and talents, and we lean on each other a lot. So it's been a great transition. And as we know, the teacher shortage is in crisis mode right now across our nation. And so trying to figure out ways to hold on to the teachers we have, but also continue to bring people into the profession as well is pretty much my whole mantra and focus right now. So, but also been married for 26 years and have 2 boys that are grown. So I'm an empty nester. This is my first year as an empty nester. So one's a freshman at Valdosta State in Georgia and majoring in biology. And then I have a son who's a teacher and a coach in Northwest Arkansas. And so really proud of him. He's in his 3rd year. So still very new, but he's doing really well. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really, that's just really cool. We were briefly empty nesters. So I have one who graduated from college a year ago, and but the whole COVID thing, she got sent home from the university, and then now has a full-time job, but is still home basing from here, and we'll see how long that lasts. But she just finally bought her own car yesterday. I mean, it was
that's big.
Lease, but still, I took that first step. So, but
that's right.
Yeah. It's a whole different world when the kids are gone out of the house. It really is. So
yes,
I want to jump back to
parenting
absolutely.
young adults is a whole different process too. We could have a whole podcast on that.
No kidding, it doesn't stop when they graduate from high school or college, and you continue to be their parent.
Right.
So I want to bounce back to something that you were talking about in your intro with the work you're doing as a retention and recruitment specialist. And first, I want to hit on just that recruitment part of it. Before we hit record, you were talking a little bit about going and spending some time on a couple of different university campuses and spending time with pre-service teachers, juniors in college, that kind of thing, and how that connection can help provide that recruitment. But I don't know, maybe talk a little bit more about that and about kind of how those first 3 years working in Arkansas look, because it sounds considerably different than a lot of states around the United States.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate that I live in a state who values the educator role and knows that it's super important to focus on how we can retain our teachers. And that's directly related to the level of support that they receive, not only as a state, but in their individual districts and buildings. And so we do a lot of work as a state on professional learning communities. Solution Tree has a home base in our state now because we use them so much. And so a lot of our teachers are growing into those best practices, as a first year teacher. And that's incredible because those schools that have that PLC environment, they have that professional learning community, tend to wrap their arms around new educators, and raise them up, the way that we need them to be. And so it's directly related. Their retention is directly related to the amount of support they get usually, even though this job is stressful. So that's important. But also just, we've noticed such a drop in our nation in our ed prep programs across different colleges, and some are even having to cancel their ed prep program because there's not enough enrollment, and that's so terrifying to me. And so I'm fortunate in the region where I work that there are several colleges that are very local, and they're always willing to collaborate with Archford, where I work. And my boss is super big on building those relationships with our local colleges, and specifically with the College of Education in those colleges. And so she's given me some opportunities to create some collaboration with a couple of the colleges that are close to me. And it has been so incredible because the professors, they give back too. And I've scheduled a couple of them for sessions when we have our new teacher conference in the fall. And, it's a very reciprocal relationship that we're building, and I just love it. And so I've been able to go on campus a few times and just be a guest teacher to talk on something specific that the professor may want just another perspective on, or some more just additional information for the students. And so I've been able to meet these teachers who are just coming into their ed prep program, and a lot of them are juniors. They're in their junior block, and I've talked to some seniors too that are getting ready to do their internship. And so just building those relationships and getting to meet them and learn if they if they want to go back to where they grew up to teach, if they want to stay in this region, because ultimately that's what I want. I want them to be able to work where I serve, so I can continue to build relationships with them once they become a teacher. And so it's really cool to go out and see those faces. And they some of them are 20 years old. Most of them are 20 or 21 years old. There are a few that are that have they're doing it as a second career, or they started later, but they're just so young and impressionable right now. And the more support we can provide them, and the more friendly faces and positive things to say about education, but also, being real with them about the difficulty and the challenges that are there. So they see the reality, but they also understand the rewards that come out of it, because if your heart is 100% in it, you're going to get so much out of it. And that's what keeps teachers going, in their profession is what they get back from it, the differences that they make and the relationships that they build, and the impact that they can have on students, so, and families too. So I've loved that part of my job, being able to do that. It's been phenomenal. And I love to, it's almost like I get to be a teacher again, in some aspects, and be able to go back and have some students again. So that part's fantastic too.
I think it's that. Obviously, I'm sure people can hear it in your voice. Obviously, I get to see you right now, but just the pure joy that you have in describing what you're doing, I think is just, it's truly, truly amazing. I think too, and maybe I'm projecting this. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think in some ways you are getting to do some of the best work that principals get to do without having to do some of the work that nobody really likes to do as a principal.
Yes, yeah, that really is kind of it in a nutshell, actually. And I did have a hard time transitioning. I knew it was going to be difficult, and fortunately had some relationships um, with people who had done this, kind of similar. They had left the public school setting, like in a building, and done, gone into something, that focuses more on adult learning. And so I was able to talk through a lot of that and was prepared, like you're probably gonna cry some days. You're going to think, what have I done? And I did go through some of those days, and it still, stings a little bit. Sometimes I'll go into a school and I'm there to see a teacher, and kids, see me and they're like, I don't know who you are. And they ask about, like, do you work here? Are you a sub? Or, who are you?
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, I just, that makes me miss that, that school community, and, being able to,
Yeah.
to see the same kids every day and the same families. But I am so grateful for the opportunity that I have right now to be able to meet so many different people. And instead of one district, there are 28. And I've learned so much from every school that I've visited, because they all have their own dynamic. And so it's just a really great supportive role to have, because it's really good just to be the light and not have to be the heat, like
Love that
administrators
phrase.
have to do. Even though I loved being a principal, and I miss it every day, but this job is truly it's such a perfect fit for the stage in my career too. So I'm so blessed that I was able to find it, because it's I feel like I'm where I need to be, for sure.
I think it's awesome. I really do. I mean, again, there's just so much joy when you describe it, and like you. I mean, obviously, I transitioned out of being in a building pretty much like for the first time in my life. I know that's true for you too. You go to school as a student, and then you go to college and you're a student, and then when you're done, what do? You go back to school as an educator, and so. Yeah. I mean, I still, honestly, Bethany, I still can't think in terms of January to December as a year. I mean, running a business, I have to think of January to December as a year, but I can't do it. I'm still stuck on this July to June.
July 1st,
yeah. Year is. Yeah, exactly. So
that's when when the budget starts over. That's when everything is fresh again. Yeah,
absolutely. I know. That's when I start counting revenue again. Okay, starting in July, here's where that doesn't matter, but to me, it always will. Once you're on the school calendar, you're always on a school calendar. It's just the way that it is. So, I've said the word a couple of times, and so I want to go down this path here really quick. Joy. I think, I'm not sure. You and I've been connected for quite some time. We until today, really, we haven't had an actual conversation. A lot of stuff through Twitter, and maybe a little bit of texting and some of those kinds of things. But even before you wrote the foreword for my book, which I'm still so grateful for, I go back to what probably we got connected over, which was your hashtag joyful leaders. And I still, to this day, I'll use it. I won't use it all the time, but I still will use that. I know you and I still tag each other occasionally in posts and that kind of stuff. But talk a little bit about where that came from, how that just kind of took place, because now it's huge. It is absolutely huge. You have a massive following on social media, and I'm not saying that's the reason why, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with it. So just talk a little bit about the joyful leaders concept.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny, because it started I journal a lot. And I'm kind of the old school journaler. I love notebooks and just love to write it out, and still type some too, but I just love, there's something about the pen hitting the paper. And so I doodle a lot too, when I'm brainstorming and thinking. And one day I just wrote that hashtag out. And I was working on a blog post, and I was kind of in a rut. And so, I wrote it out and kind of stared at it for a while, and I thought, there's something kind of catchy about it, and so I decided to write a blog post around that hashtag, and I really didn't expect it to take off. It was sort of just for me, it was just like something I wanted to have that attached to my name, and I encouraged people to use it, but I didn't really expect it to be, a thing. But it started to become a thing. And then what I noticed was I would look through and there would be, 20 or 30 posts a day. And it was all just great things going on, in buildings and in communities. And even a few people who aren't educators have picked up on using it, they're CEOs or entrepreneurs, and so that's really cool when that happens too. But just for to have an outlet for educators to share something great that's going on, or to brag on someone, to do a shout out for someone. Also to post encouragement. There's a lot of quotes and things that are pushed out through Joyful Leaders that are inspirational, encouraging, just great reminders. And I love that. And there's some people who contribute on a regular basis, and then there's some people that show up randomly. And I look at it 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm like, there's a new person I can follow, that I probably wouldn't be connected to. Or I look and they're following me, and I'm like, why am I not following them? They're using the hashtag, And so it's created a lot of connections for me too, of a network, of people to follow. So I never expect it to be, a big thing, but it just kind of became that. So mainly on Twitter and Instagram, those are the 2 places I see it, used the most and everything. So it's been very fulfilling to see how people use it and use it in such great ways. So
yeah, I think it's definitely one of the things that really catches your eye. And for me, it's just I just think it's a great reflection point, because as educators, and I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, probably before we hit record, but there definitely is a challenge that exists for all of our educators right now that maybe wasn't as prevalent before the pandemic. And that's just the pure amount of negativity and the, education bashing, if you will, that seems to be happening and is pretty prevalent in our society. It still amazes me how, 2 years ago right now, teachers were the biggest heroes, alongside our first responders, our doctors and our nurses. But then it didn't take very long, and all of a sudden teacher shaming became like this big thing. And so for teachers to be able to, educators, not just teachers, for educators to be able to try to, let go of the things they can't control and kind of push aside that negativity and stay focused on the joy that really is in the job, I think is just really critical. And I'm grateful to hear and see that Joyful Leaders just continues to have posts attached to it, because people are still remembering the joy that truly exists there.
Yes, absolutely.
I just think that's a really big deal. And it ties in with something that I know you and I are both very, very passionate about, which is school culture and climate. And I know that's one of your speaking topics. It's something that you care about. It's obviously something, I'm all about let's catch them doing it right instead of, focusing on everything that they're doing wrong. When you're working with pre-service teachers or even teachers in their first 3 years, let's maybe focus on them a little bit more, because that's more your day-to-day job.
Yes.
What are some things you're doing with them in terms of helping them establish that positive culture and climate in their classroom, taking responsibility for the culture and climate in their schools, those types of things?
Yeah, that's something that I'm still soaking in on a regular basis. But I walked into an amazing setup. I will say that because there's a team. I have a team of 2 or 3 other people we have a huge team, but there are a couple of other people that are on the mentoring team. And we are constantly brainstorming and sharing ideas, but they already had a great framework going. And then our state is really focused on supporting those teachers in their first 3 years heavily, because that's when we tend to lose them. If they don't feel supported or they don't have layers of support. So it starts with our state, because they kind of set those expectations, and that's kind of where my job comes in. But then we have the autonomy to develop the way we want that training to look, with certain criteria, that our state suggests as well. But some of the biggest things that we always want to expose those new teachers to are not just content things, or isolated things, but concepts that will impact their entire classroom environment and their core beliefs and values. Because as teachers, as young teachers or new teachers, those are developing still. They're still using a lot of their identity and how they were raised and where they came from to shape their opinions and beliefs. And we all do that still. But when you're young, that's all you have to go off of, and stepping into a classroom without a lot of, worldly experience is so difficult, because we can be very sometimes jaded in the way we see other people or groups of people, or concepts. And so culturally responsive teaching has been a big focus for our new teachers, just getting them to reflect on their own implicit bias, that implicit bias that exists in all of us, and that we're naturally, it naturally causes us to make assumptions, to make judgments, to form opinions, even, to the point of it damaging relationships. And if we're not self-aware and we don't encourage our teachers to really reflect on that on a regular basis, then sometimes they're going to miss out on some really powerful connections that they could have with students and with their families too, and colleagues as well. And so that's one of the things that we've really tried to weave into the program, and then to a lot of our PD in general that we do for teachers, is that level of awareness that they need, and to consider that access to all is what's so important, and inclusion of everyone is what's powerful. And so we tend to lean on certain traditions or things that we're very familiar with ourselves, and when we do that, that will leave someone out. It could make someone uncomfortable. It could, because not all of our backgrounds are the same. And so if we can really hone in on that with our new educators and get them to see a broader perspective, think more globally, then that is going to empower them to meet the needs of all kids, and to make their learning environments inclusive for every kid who comes to them and their families too. So that's been huge. And then we look at classroom management heavily as well, but kind of with a different spin, more on relationship based, and we try to focus on trauma sensitive practices that are suitable for all kids. And so that it's, trauma informed practices aren't just good for kids who have experienced trauma. They meet the needs of everyone, adults included. And so that's what makes them so effective, is that no matter who your audience is, those practices, they're humane, they're equitable, they're full of compassion and empathy. And that's what we need in our schools. And so any of those practices that we can share with teachers on how we view discipline, how we talk to kids when we're trying to redirect or get a desired behavior, those are things that we can easily slip into dysregulation, go back to what we know or what was done to us, and it gets easy to fall in that cycle with our new teachers. So we want to build them up and help them understand that keeping themselves regulated is the most powerful thing that they can do. And that's the one thing they really do have control of, is themselves. They can't control the emotions 100%. Of their students. They can't necessarily control the behaviors of their students. And when we try, then it doesn't go well. it usually ends up in dissension, and relationships can be very damaged from it. So it's when we tend to be hurtful as educators instead of helpful. And so teaching them to understand what triggers them, and when they feel triggered, so they can understand how to regulate and respond and not react is a huge thing that we're focusing on within our program as well. So those two things are big. And then we have general requirements, things, their evaluation system, and those kind of things that they have to, the logistics of the
Sure.
position that they have to learn, that we really hone in on those two big things, and everything is relationship based, and building that sense of belonging in their classroom.
I just think it's just so powerful that, and you mentioned before we hit the record button that in essence they're not being given a state level rating in those first 3 years, unlike
Yes.
pretty much every other state in the union. So I would think as a principal or as a superintendent, number one, you would be like my go-to, my best friend, my number one on my speed dial for not only an early career teacher who might be struggling, but just for all of my staff. And I know you focus primarily on that group, but I would think everybody can benefit and learn from so much of what you and your team are doing to support teachers. Because I mean, let's be honest. Pre-pandemic, there were so many great things happening in so many schools, and there still are, but there are a lot who kind of, because of this traumatic event that we've all been through, have kind of fallen into this, kind of this default mode, or like the factory reset button got hit, and we're reacting instead of responding. Like you said, I love how you said that. Actually, I think that's really important, because reacting tends to lead to blame, or to finger pointing, or what's wrong with that person, as opposed to, okay, what might be the root cause behind this, and how can I help? I think it's all about mindset, right?
Absolutely. And the whole learning loss term and everything that we do both basically right now is a lot of reacting to that, how much more intervention can we provide? How can we close these gaps? And, and so sometimes just taking a step back from that and thinking about what is the biggest need right now. Go back to Maslow, and a
There you
lot of
go.
our students are missing those basic needs and those physiological things, but then also just that sense of belonging and being able to feel comfortable in the school setting, because a lot of our kids are so dysregulated right now that they aren't comfortable in school. And until we can help them learn those skills and develop that skill set to be able to be in control of themselves, the learning is going to be all over the place, and it's going to,
Right.
it may come, but it also may not be retained. And so but in a way our adults are there too. It's this, they're experiencing some of the same things that our students are, with dysregulation and just being in survival mode, and going
Right.
back to what what is more automatic and quick and fast, to get through something, and
Right.
that's human nature for us to do that. So that goes back to that school culture of how are we taking care of each other? What's that collective care look like? And are we supporting each other and having each other's back when someone is falling? Because there's going to be somebody
Yeah.
falling at any given time right now.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Well, and I think so that feeds perfectly into kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit next. You said earlier, and I love this quote so much, I wrote it down. I'm going to use it at some point in time, and of course, give full credit to you. But that teacher retention is a direct correlation to the amount of support that they get. So when I think about having been a principal and been a superintendent, but really, I'm a recovering high school principal. I always will be. That's where my mind goes. So I think about now the level of supports that staff need from their leaders. And as principals, you and I could always, pre-pandemic, we could always counter any question of, well, you don't know what it's like to be a teacher, because yeah, we had. Yes, we did. But principals now, unless they taught during the pandemic, have no idea what it's like to be a teacher in the pandemic. I have no idea what it's like to be a principal during a pandemic, because it's a completely different ballgame. So when we talk about how we support educators that are in the classroom, or our food service folks, our bus drivers, everybody needs the support. It's not just our teachers. Everybody says, hey, our teachers they're not okay, and they're right. But our leaders aren't okay. Our bus drivers aren't okay. Our custodians aren't okay. Nobody's okay right now. Where I'm going with this is really back to those leaders in the school. And when you're in those schools, or when your leaders come into, the Archford Center and they're there for PD, what are some of your conversations look like? Or maybe what's something that has stood out to you in terms of maybe some guidance either you're giving them or you're overhearing on how do you support your people right now?
Yeah, I know that one of my team members is she kind of directs the principal collaborative. And so they have monthly meetings. And of course, not all principals can come some months. It's especially right now, you never know, as you're being a principal, it was, usually down to the minute. You have every plan to hop in the car and go to the meeting, but then, something's on fire and and it changes everything,
Got to be a firefighter sometimes.
Yes. So they usually do have a really great group, and they kind of balance between face-to-face meetings and some Zooms too, because that can be supportive. But they've been focusing this year a lot on coaching conversations, because those are so much more supportive. And as administrators, we really do want to be, like, my goal was to always try to be the coach and to support. But, we also have that evaluator side to us as well. And to balance that is so hard, because we can't just be all coach and we can't just be all evaluator either. There has to be that happy balance, and finding that is so difficult. And so this year, that's been a big focus of the principal leadership with my teammate Karen, who's been overseeing that group. And they've studied the coaching habit, and that book is incredible. It's not really an education book, but it just goes across all relationships, and it really sets the tone for being a good listener and allowing the voice of the teacher to really come out, and almost in a problem-solving kind of way. And so when a teacher is just at that frustration level, and you know how that feels, where you really can't think or process, much less try to find a solution. So you just have to get it all out and vent and be upset, and we have to give our educators, we have to give our teachers room to do that. We need to give our leaders room to do that too. And it's healthy to be able to unleash that, but then also to bring the conversation back on, okay, so tell me more. What is the hardest thing? Where do we need to start? How can I help support this? And so coming back to those just simple questions of support, and being able to listen with intention, not necessarily to have a solution, because a lot of teachers, right now, they're not really necessarily looking for a direct fix. Sometimes they are, and sometimes that's what they need. I need you to fix this, please, Right. And a lot of times we can, as administrators, a lot of times the principals can, if they listen and they can make a change in the building and the structure and the schedule, and it takes care of the stress, but sometimes I think teachers they're not necessarily looking to be fixed or to have something fixed, but just to be able to be heard and know that, hey, I feel so burned out right now, and I don't know how to get out of this rut. How can I get myself out of this? Because I hate how I feel right now. Being bold enough to be able to say that without being labeled as being negative, or, giving up on the profession, or those things that are kind of out there right now, because there's just a difference between being able to express concern and share the emotions that you're experiencing, and complaining. It's just really two different things, and definitely one can lead to the other for sure, and but that's where those conversations come come into play, is being able to ask the right questions at the right time and know when to listen, and not
Yeah.
be the book, The Coaching Habit, that talks about the advice monster. And sometimes we just want to be the advice monster because we want to help fix it. We want to say, well, maybe you could try this, maybe you could do this. And sometimes that can just be the biggest insult to teachers right now, because they're like, you think I haven't tried that yet? You can see it on their face sometimes. And so, I think that's a really great thing for principals to know. I know I would have needed that big time as a principal, because I did want to try to fix a lot of things. I wanted to try to just save them. Oh my gosh, you're so stressed. Let me see if I can save you from this. Mm-hmm. And I did the same thing sometimes with families too. When I saw crisis, I wanted to be that helper, but not in the most healthy way. So I had to learn to balance that, and know that I can help and support without enabling or taking care of all of it, without those people included,
Right.
Just wanting to be the savior, have the savior mentality, because that's not healthy either. And so I think that's been huge for our principals this year. And then we've actually, I led a book study with our teacher leader collaborative. That's part of our mentoring program. And we also did the coaching habit, because those teachers have groups of brand new teachers that are in year one that they support, and mostly digitally, because regionally they're all over the place. And so, we went through the coaching habit with them as well, just so they could learn those questions, and when is the right time to ask, to ask that question, and when's the right time just to be quiet and not say anything, just listen, and not offer a solution. So, long story short,
that's great advice. Yeah, no, it's great advice. And I will actually, in the show notes, folks, I'll put the link to the coaching habits. So if you want to check that book out, honestly, it's one I haven't gotten yet. So that's, as soon as we end this call, I'm ordering that book. So I have a chance to dive into it.
Very easy read too.
And that's my kind
even
of read
better,
right there. Yeah, exactly. So, well, and something you said in there, I think, especially early career leaders will struggle. I know I struggled big time with trying to do exactly what you said, trying to be the everything for everybody. I have to solve this problem, or I can do this, or I can do this, and listening with intent. I think this is one of the big pieces there is, what is the intent of as the leader, why you're listening? Are you listening to just try to solve their problems? Or are you just listening to let them be heard? Because I heard this quote once at a Kagan training. It was actually Lori Kagan, so Spencer Kagan's wife, said in a training one time. I wrote it down, and I've clung to. I even put it in my book. It's so good. 99% of the people that we would label as struggling or not on board or defiant just simply want to be heard. And if we're willing to just listen, not listen with judgment, not listen to quickly respond or to prove them wrong, but just listen, that solves a lot of it. Because you're right. I mean, sometimes you just need to vent and you just need to let it out. And the last thing you want is Darrin trying to give you a solution. Just shut up and listen. And, that's what they need. Heck, our kids need that sometimes too. We've got to remember that too with our kids, sometimes and as a high school principal, man, I sat out on the benches all the time. And I mean, that's, my secretary would say, well, if Darrin's not in the classroom, he's on one of the benches, just go find him. He's out there somewhere. And that was the thing with the kids too, is just listen, I mean, sometimes they want advice, and sometimes adults want advice or some guidance, or like you said, sometimes it's a problem that you're like, oh, well, I could fix that. We just need to change the way we're doing drop off or how we're doing whatever, but sometimes just listen to them. That's what they need. That's really what they need. And sometimes they just need comfort, and they need to know that they're not alone, and that there's somebody there who's got their back. Sometimes they need a little bit more. And this is the last thing I want to get to. And then we're going to, of course, I'll ask you how you're leaning into leadership, but at your feet is a service animal. and
Yes.
it's something that is kind of new for you. It's something that's really making. It's been around for a long time, but I think it's really starting to make inroads heavily into education. So, like I said, there's a service animal at your feet. So let's talk a little bit about that, how that came about, how that's working for you, what you're learning in that process.
Well, as a principal, I always wanted to have a service dog, in my building, and that was 7 or 8 years ago, and it just wasn't as big of a thing then, and so now I think there's a lot more research out there. There's a lot more. Proof that it can be very effective. And so, now that I'm not in a building, I really never thought that it would be a possibility to be able to be involved in that. But last fall, we were brainstorming as a team and started thinking about educator wellness and how the mental state of our teachers is just so crucial to retaining them, number one, but also to their effectiveness in the classroom. And we have to have healthy teacher environments in order for our teachers to feel at their very best. And right now, I don't know of any teacher who truly feels their very best because of just the state of the world. It's just really hard to feel highly effective right now. As I talk to so many teachers who I know they're fabulous, but they don't see it in themselves right now, even though maybe 2 years ago they would have considered themselves a highly effective teacher, and they're still doing the same things, but the dynamics are so different now. And so that level of burnout that teachers are experiencing because maybe they're not seeing the growth in students that we would normally see, or they're seeing so many barriers to learning that maybe have always been there under the surface, but now it exists in more kids and it's more exposed than ever before. And so that's just a burden that, all of our educators are carrying, but that classroom teacher, we all know that's the deciding factor. Just what John Hattie says, that's the number one deciding factor in the success of a kid is the classroom teacher. And so, we really were trying to figure out ways that we could embed educator wellness into everything that we do, even from the simple reminders of drink water, like stop and drink water. Do not, because teachers tend to dehydrate themselves. They tend to not eat, so do school leaders, because I've had many days where I've had a cup of coffee, 2 Cokes, and some peanut butter from a tongue depressor in the nurse's office. And that's how I've, made it through the day. And so I'm the worst, to preach about educator wellness ever.
Yeah.
But we want to teach, especially our new educators, that they have to be able to listen to their bodies and know when, enough is enough, and that there has to be some balance there. And so we started trying to think of just little ways that we could, even at our facility, bring some, just some joy into the environment. And we kind of started dreaming. We thought, wouldn't it be great to have a dog? Everybody would just eat a dog up. That would be so great. We could train it to go to schools too. We could train it to visit teachers and kids eventually, and all this. And so we started looking at grants, started looking at how we could find the money for it. And then I reached out to a friend, a former family that I had when I was an administrator, who breeds dogs, doodles, and asked some advice from her on what type of doodle to get, and about how much would it cost, things like that. And so I shared the vision with her, and she decided to donate a puppy to us. And so the next step was getting approval from our director here. And so that was a process. And I'm brand new here, and I'm thinking, and he is too, actually. And so, we knew that we were probably just going to, take him for a loop, but we shared the idea with him, and he said, write me a proposal. Tell me the pros, tell me the cons. I want you to think of everything. I want you to go visit schools that have therapy dogs, whatever. And so we did that, and we let him sit on it and for a while and think about it, because it's a big deal. And thankfully, he ended up approving the process. And so about 10 weeks later, 12 weeks later, we had an 8-week-old standard poodle join our staff here at Arch Ford, and his title is Emotional Support Specialist. His name is Archibald Ford. We call him Archie because our facility is called Arch Ford, and so he is in training right now to he's learning how to be a good canine citizen at the moment. So we've graduated puppy school, and he's going through that process, which will probably take about 10 to 12 weeks. And then he'll also go into some educational assistance dog training too, to be acclimated to schools. And so, but right now he really is just for the adults, and the amount of joy that he has brought is incredible. Not just to our new teachers, but to every educator who comes on campus. And so, and I've taken him out to schools a couple of times to visit new teachers. And so it has been a phenomenal experience. And it's been really cool to see how it can support our grown-ups just as much as it can our kids. So we're building a professional development session around Archie to help superintendents, principals, counselors, who kind of want to get this started in their school. And we're hoping that it can spread and that we can educate more about the importance of adding, a service animal to a school environment, because it's so beneficial. And so it's been an incredible experience. And he lives with me, so he gets to ride shotgun with me every day to work, and I love it.
That's perfect. Yeah. I bet. I can just see him rolling down the road in the Mustang with the wind blowing through his ears. So that's awesome.
Yeah, he likes to sit up front most days. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, and I see now Archie even has his own social media handle. I mean, am I getting that right here?
Yep, he has an Instagram account, and we did that in order to be transparent about the process, and a lot of people are curious about what he does outside of the workday, and how he is at home and things like that. So I share a lot of the whole story, of him just being a puppy, but then also, how his training is progressing, and it's all from his perspective. And so he's like the number one teacher fan. That's his gig. And so anytime he gets to hang out with teachers, educators, period, he's all about it. So he's the official greeter here at Arch Ford. So like this morning, we had a bunch of people coming on campus. They were specialists from all over the state, literacy specialists and math specialists. And so we were at the front door, greeting everybody who came in, and just, spreading a little bit of joy before the day started. So it's amazing what just sometimes something little like that can do for just the collective feel of a room or a school as a whole. It can just add that element of joy that we all need right now. So important.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it just, as a dog person, we have 2 dachshunds, a mini and a regular size, and you come home from a tough day and everything melts away when my mini wants nothing more than to just give me kisses. I mean, it just, everything kind of melts away. So I think it's super powerful that you guys are doing that. It's incredible leadership, and I'm glad to see that's happening, and it's happening in more and more places around the country. It's definitely something that fits. I'll make sure and I'll include Archie's social media handle in the show notes too, so people can follow him. I'll definitely be following him from now on. There's no question about that. So last question. Honestly, Bethany, you and I could probably talk for another 2 or 3 hours. And I would hope that some of our listeners would say, yeah, I'd listen to that for another 2 or 3 hours. But just one final question for this particular time. We'll have you back on the podcast again some other time. But right now, you've given us a lot of different ways that you're leaning into leadership. What might be one thing that you're doing to lean in that we didn't talk about, or that you just want to emphasize a little bit more?
Oh, goodness. Well, I have ventured into the world of higher education a little bit. I started adjuncting this semester, and that's been a big stretch for me to focus on that level of learning. I've loved it. It has been so much fun. It's not something that I want to do full time, of course, because I'm so in love with what I do. But it's just another connection, to the education world. And these are graduate students that are looking to be superintendents or district people, and so being able to talk with those type of students has been so rewarding to me. And I feel like that's just another level of investment that I can create, and help with. And they know a lot more than I do because they're out there doing it. And they're all administrators or about to be administrators right now. And so I've learned more from them than they could ever have learned from me, but through their conversations and just their perspectives. So I really want to continue to push myself in that area and grow as as someone who leads adult learning in various platforms, because adult learning, it does have a lot of similarities to the way we teach kids, but we also know there's a lot of dynamics involved with adult learners that we have to be able to be in tuned, with. And so I'm really trying to stretch myself there, because sometimes my audience is brand new teachers. Sometimes it's a group of experienced teachers. Sometimes it may be future superintendents, but I want to make sure that I can do what I did with kids when I taught them, be able to adapt and be flexible and adjust, my lens to meet those needs too. So I've really stretched myself in just a year's time, trying to grasp the whole concept of andragogy and be able to just understand it more in depth, I guess. Even though I've done all kinds of trainings, in the past and everything, but now it is my purpose. It's my purpose has completely shifted, and I know that everything that I do could potentially influence one way or the other what an educator goes back into their building and does. And so I take that very seriously.
I think it's a great example of how, we hear so much about, and it's probably even gotten overused, about, finding our why or our purpose, and how over the course of our lifetime, over the course of our career, that purpose may shift, and it's okay for that to happen. Certainly, what called me into education still is probably at my core. But the way that I've gone about that, and the way that I am, in my way, fulfilling that purpose, the way you're fulfilling that purpose, has evolved over time. And I think that's something educators need to be comfortable with, and see that other people do that, and it's okay to not be a kindergarten teacher your whole career, or a science teacher. It's also okay to do that. I'm not saying that it's not, but sometimes our calling will take us in directions we didn't expect. And I think it's wonderful that you're working with those folks who are striving to be a superintendent or striving to be a principal or something like that. And no matter what you say, they're going to learn a lot from you. I have no question about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Bethany, for coming on the show. I had just an amazing time having this conversation with you. And I definitely look forward to the time that will happen when we actually get to meet each other in person.
Yes, it's going to happen.
Man, I enjoyed that conversation so much. I hope you did as well. I will tell you that Bethany and I talked for at least 45 minutes before we hit record, and probably another 20 or 30 minutes afterwards. It was really, truly fun to be able to connect with her and to have some of those connections. And there are so many gold nuggets to take away from that conversation from a leadership perspective. But I'm going to tell you this, the one that I think just really jumps out, and everybody we talk to in education, of course, you love kids, and that's a big part of the role. It's imperative that you love kids. Otherwise, why would you be doing what you're doing? But Bethany loves education. She truly loves the profession. And you hear that in her talking about the work she's doing, not only as a recruitment and retention specialist, but also as an adjunct professor at the University of Central Arkansas. Thank you again so much, Bethany. It means the world to me to have you on. It means the world to consider you a friend, and honestly, to share the education profession with you. You are truly a hero. And now it's time for a quick pep talk. We're headed into the month of May. We're headed down the stretch, folks. You can see the finish line. If you consider the school year an airplane flight like I always did, you're about to get the plane on the ground. But hey, we still got to finish strong. And by that, I'm not talking about academic standards. I'm not talking about teaching and learning in the classroom. Yes, you still need to finish strong there. I'm talking about for yourself and for the people around you. Bring that positive energy. Fix it in your seat before you hit the street. So every morning when you're in your car or you're walking to work, whatever it is, get your mindset right. Take that deep breath and remember, you make the difference each and every day for the kids whose lives you touch. Bring that positive energy, bring that fire, and bring that love. Because when everybody has that from you, they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel loved. Get out there, have a road to awesome week, and we'll catch you again next time on the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Thank you for listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, brought to you by Road to Awesome. Don't forget, click subscribe, give a review, and share this with somebody who might also enjoy leaning into leadership.